Trump says he is ending the temporary deportation protections for Somalis in Minnesota. Now the question is, why is he doing that? People are freaking out about this, saying, here goes Trump just targeting those poor immigrants. But the truth of the matter is, there's an incredibly good reason for it. It turns out that under former President Joe Biden, Somali refugees were granted temporary protective status. They were allowed to come into this country either legally or illegally. And regardless of their immigration status, Biden shielded them with TPS, allowing them all to not only reside in America, but also through various forms of chain migration policy, these Somalis, again, whether they're legal or illegal, have also been bringing in their family members as well. Apparently, they're just allowed to do that. They're allowed to just flood America with more of them. It continues to get worse, this story, because what they've been doing once they enter America is defrauding the government and the American people. Apparently, this is so widespread, this Somali fraud, that it's caught the attention of the president. Trump is outraged over this, which is why he has removed their TPS. Take a look at just some of the examples of the Somali fraud happening in a state like Minnesota, for instance. Like this example right here, where a restaurant was apparently the forefront of government fraud when it came to feeding children. Yes, the name of this organization apparently was Feeding Our Future, where they claimed that they were feeding a huge number of children all of the time, and therefore they needed government funds in the form of taxpayer dollars. The FBI grew suspicious of this, however, and they decided to investigate.
In December of 2021, the FBI installed a surveillance camera overlooking this building just off Lake Street in Minneapolis. At the time, it was Safari Restaurant, which overall took in $12 million in federal child meal payments through Feeding Our Future. Safari's former co-owner, Salim Saeed, is on trial alongside Amy Bach, the Feeding Our Future executive director. Safari claimed to feed 4,000 to 6,000 kids a day. Its invoices and meal counts shown to the jury alongside the video. An FBI agent testifying that an average of 40 people came and went during the 6 weeks it was surveilled. The FBI set up a total of 12 cameras at sites claiming to serve extraordinary numbers of meals. Another was at a deli in St. Paul, also registered by defendant Salim Saeed, which claimed 1,800 meals per day. The video shown to the jury showed an average of 23 people a day coming and going. The jury was shown dozens of invoices, meal counts, and emails seized from Feeding Our Future's headquarters in St. Anthony. Some showed links to websites that randomly generated names and ages to create rosters of children who were served meals. Many were signed or sent by Amy Bach, who's charged with wire fraud, along with bribery for the alleged kickbacks that she received.
This is just one of the examples, and what they were doing was claiming they were feeding 4,000 to 6,000 children per day. Plus that other deli place was feeding apparently 1,800 for a total of what they were claiming to be 6,000 to 8,000 total children per day, when in actuality that number was anywhere between 40 to 60 children. And they were apparently using some online name generator to just make up names of children who never existed. And then they were claiming that these were actual children they were feeding. The surveillance, of course, showed much differently, revealing the real number to be far lower. And what were they doing with the rest of that money that they were receiving in government aid, funding, etc., to be able to feed these supposed thousands of children who don't exist? Well, they were pocketing it, of course. Because when you're only feeding 40 kids throughout a time span of 6 weeks, but you're receiving funds to be able to feed thousands of children a day, you have a ton of money left over. So they were pocketing somewhere around $12 million and doing nothing good with it. It was straight up fraud. Even worse when it comes to Feeding Our Future. This is something that I want the Trump administration to look into, because I already covered this guy right here. You may recognize him. He's Omar Fateh, and he narrowly missed becoming the mayor of a city in Minneapolis just this past election cycle earlier this month. I covered him as he was waving his Somali flag in the United States, speaking at a convention with the Somali colors all over the place, and he was, of course, giving praise to Allah. Well, it turns out that this guy was linked with the Feeding Our Futures. When he was on the campaign trail years ago, he's on video giving thanks to them. Of course, when his connection was found out to Feeding Our Futures, he quickly made a public statement denouncing everything they were doing, insisting on the fact that he was hardly involved with it at all. Nevertheless, I'm sure you'll agree with this, The Trump administration needs to investigate him regardless, and for that matter, they should probably also investigate Ilhan Omar, because she backed Omar Fateh, who was involved with feeding our futures. I want to point something else out here too. The Somali demographic in America, the ones that were protected by Joe Biden and allowed to just flood into this nation and gain temporary protected status, they have become the highest, most likely demographic to commit crime in all of America. And what are they known for over in their country? They're known for piracy. So this really shouldn't be all that surprising to anybody, but it is shocking to hear the details of it. And when it comes to the fraud here, they've also been defrauding Medicaid.
Questionable use of your tax dollars. 5 investigates found a once celebrated nonprofit received hundreds of thousands of dollars in public money even after its board chair was charged with fraud.
The organization is Kajog. It won awards over the years for the work that it did with Somali kids. But 5 investigates found that its board chair was charged in a massive Medicaid fraud case in 2023. Now, in the last 2 years after those charges were filed, our team discovered that the State Department of Human Services kept sending the nonprofit hundreds of thousands of dollars in state grants. We brought our findings to Republican State Representative Isaac Schultz.
Here's an excellent breakdown from Will Kane on Fox when it comes to the Somalis defrauding Medicaid.
That is Minnesota's Medicaid Housing Stabilization Services. Now, this was created to help seniors, addicts, and others find housing. But the criteria to enter this program was incredibly loose and therefore easy to take advantage of. It's led to fraud and costs absolutely exploding. Just 5 years ago, in 2020, costs for this program were $2.6 million. 4 years later, by 2024, cost had been over $100 million, 104. Through the first 6 months of this year, costs are at $61 million, meaning if you double that over the entirety of the year, you're looking at $122 million. In 5 years, from $2 million to $122 million. Now, why? 6 people are accused of defrauding HSS, and they're members of the Somali community.
Do you see why President Donald Trump got reelected now? That is taxpayer money. That is massive fraud occurring. That is Americans being cast aside in favor of Somalis who are literally defrauding the government. This is the problem that America is facing when it comes to our immigration policy and us being so nice to everybody all around the world. Trump was voted in on a mandate, and probably his number one mandate being immigration reform via deportations and closed borders. And this is why it's so important. These people come here and they don't care about Americans. They don't appreciate America like we do. They don't respect us, and they don't love our country. They only see opportunity to exploit us. And it gets even worse. They didn't stop with their shamelessness of pretending to be feeding thousands of more children than they actually were and then pocketing the rest of the change. Nor did they stop with defunding Medicaid. They also targeted children with autism.
This just gets worse if we take a look at Minnesota's federally funded autism program. Now, several people, and this is an example, a woman in the Somali community, are co-conspirators, and they're accused of recruiting kids for autism therapy. They brought in families, had them convinced to get their kids diagnosed as autistic. In fact, these families ultimately ended up having various social services bid for their children, competing with the number and size of check that they would get. It didn't matter if the kids had autism. And what happened? Autism claims to Medicaid surged. In 2018, $3 million. By 2023, listen here, from $3 million to $400 million. Autism providers jumped from 41 to 328 in 5 years.
I just want you to hear that number again, just so you can see how blatant the fraud was.
Listen here, from $3 million to $400 million.
$3 million to $400 million in 5 years. The worst part is it went on for 5 years before anyone even seemed to notice. And now we're coming up on 8 years before anything has actually been done about it, courtesy of President Donald Trump, who has removed their protective status. And the ultimate worst part about all of this is where this money wound up going. Because yes, they were pocketing this money and enriching themselves, but that's not all they were doing with the money.
Now, City Journal reports that the Somali fraud rings send a lot of money back to Somalia. 40% of households in Somalia get remittances from abroad. That totals $1.7 billion. That is more than the entire budget of the Somali government. Money being sent abroad, from abroad, back to Somalia. Where is that money going? Take a look at this. Most alarmingly, a lot of that money is funneled through money traders, and in the end, ends up in the hands of al-Qaeda-linked Islamic terror group Al-Shabaab.
So just to connect all of the dots finally for you, not only do these Somalis come here on a protected status, or at least they did, but then they come here, they don't respect America, they don't appreciate us, they don't care about us, they don't love our country, and they only see an opportunity to exploit us. So they do. They pretend to be feeding poor, starving children when they're not. They pocket the cash. They defraud Medicaid, essentially taking up spots and resources that Americans could benefit from. They pocket the cash. And then they take advantage of children with autism and create false cases of that, encouraging their own children to be diagnosed with autism so they can once again pocket the cash. And after that, when they're done defrauding America, they not only enrich themselves, but they send over large portions of that money back home to Somalia, which then goes towards funding terrorist organizations, our enemy. And they do so in such an amount that even the entire country of Somalia can't generate that much money. So they're stealing from us, they're putting our own Americans at a disadvantage who actually need the aid, and they're funding our enemies with the money. Now, of course, this is why President Trump had this to say on social media about this. Minnesota, under Governor Walz, is a hub of fraudulent money laundering activity. I am, as President of the United States, hereby terminating, effective immediately, the Temporary Protected Status TPS program for Somalis in Minnesota. Somali gangs are terrorizing people of the great state, and billions of dollars are missing. Send them back to where they came from. It's over. President DJT. And yeah, it's happening right under Governor Tim Walz's nose. Surprise, surprise. This man wanted to be the vice president of this country, and he can't even run his state without allowing massive fraud and corruption. Even less shocking, though, is his response to President Donald Trump stripping Somalis of their protected status, saying, "It's not surprising that the president has chosen a broadly targeted entire community. This is what he does to change the subject." Give me a break. Tim Walz is a scumbag, incompetent governor, and thank God he's not the vice president right now. On top of that, I think he should be investigated because this happened under his state. Is it any surprise that it's a Democrat governor that allowed all of this to happen? Do you think stuff like this would be happening at this kind of a scale for this long under a Ron DeSantis, for instance, governor of Florida? I don't think so. But this is why it's so important to adopt this America First and America Only agenda. We need to buckle down more on immigration, and Trump needs to keep making more decisions like this, doing more stuff like this. Less focus on foreign aid and Ukraine and Israel, more focus on this, because I guarantee you there's so much more of this happening all across America that we're not aware of. That's why DOGE is so important. That's why everyone loved when Elon and Trump were working together. He needs to bring that back. This is what young Americans especially like to see. I know I do. I don't want to hear about the Ukraine being bombed again. I quite frankly don't care. Nor do I care about Israel. I just don't. I don't plan on ever visiting or living there. I live in America and I love this country. And I love my fellow Americans. And my fellow Americans deserve the aid that was being taken away from them via Somali pirates living in this country, defrauding those programs and sending the money back to fund our enemy. It's outrageous. If you enjoyed that clip, be sure to check out my YouTube channel where I have the full video where this clip was taken from published. And if you're America First like I am and you're an American advocate, be sure to subscribe and like the post. Thanks so much for watching.